I never meant to crash at the Parador Halcon. My overnight courier run still had 3 stops and a red-eye stretch of highway to chew through, but my lids were sliding shut at 70 miles an hour, the glossy travel mag on the passenger seat promised heritage charm with 5-star comfort. Marketing fluff, I figured, yet the exit was 2 minutes out, and nodding off meant metal and guardrail. I blinked hard, flicked the blinker, and let the engine roll me in. Up close, the place looked stitched together from a castle set. Arrow-slit windows, ivy strangling the stone, a weather-beaten banner flapping like it knew Latin. Maybe the ad hadn't lied. Inside, though, silence swallowed everything. No lobby jazz, no suitcase wheels, just my boot heels clacking on marble that smelled faintly of cold incense. "Hello," I called. Echoes only. Then a door creaked, and an old woman breezed behind the desk, gray hair in a tight chignon, eyes bright like an archivist who'd misplaced nothing in 80 years. "Room for one?" I asked, sliding my license across. She studied the plastic, then lifted her gaze as if weighing my soul. "You've driven far, senor. Are you versed in the Parador's lineage?" "Just need a pillow and 4 hours," I said, forcing a grin. Her smile thinned, but she fetched a brass key the size of a cigar. "Second floor, last on the left. The Halcon keeps its own hours. Listen carefully." Before I could parse that, she tucked the ledger away and vanished into a back corridor, shoes whispering on stone. Stairwell sconces flickered like they ran on candle stubs. My door, number 217, looked older than the rest. Scarred oak, lock, polished by desperate hands. Inside lay a cathedral of a room. High ceiling, canopy bed, wardrobe hulking like a confession booth. Perfect. I shower splashed, set my alarm for 4:30 a.m., and face-planted into feathered oblivion. 15. Snapped awake, lungs half-filled, heart sprinting. No noise, just the wrongness you taste before lightning hits. The bathroom door gaped 2 inches. Swore I'd shut it. Maybe steam, maybe draft. I fisted the sheet, listening. Nothing. Finally, I clicked the lamp, marched over, and slammed the door till the hinges squealed. Back under covers, I noticed my breath clouding. Aircon wasn't that strong. Gooseflesh prickled my arms. Thud. Something hit wood. I jerked up. The antique desk chair lay sprawled, legs tangled. I'd pushed it in, I knew it. I righted it. Knuckles white, told myself fatigue warps memory. Yet my stomach churned like it had caught the lie. I double-checked. Curtains drawn. Deadbolt thrown. Chain latched. Lights off. Except bathroom glow. A nightlight against nonsense. Kriak floorboard, center of the room, bearing weight that wasn't mine. I held breath. Another step. Slow, deliberate, approaching the bed. The curtains shivered even though the window was nailed shut. I lunged for the door, rattled the knob. Secure. That's when a whisper brushed my ear, syllables too hushed to catch, but the malice was clear. I spun. Void. The bathroom bulb began to strobe, throwing the room into jittery snapshots. "Cut it out," I hissed, voice cracking like a kid's. I edged forward, hand outstretched. The instant my fingers grazed the knob, the light died, and the door slammed inward, shaking the plaster. I leapt back, throat raw, yanked the handle, locked solid. "Hey, who's in there?" My shout bounced uselessly. From inside, the whisper rose again, sliding into a guttural chuckle like someone savoring a private joke that ended with me. I backed to the foot of the bed, every instinct begging me to bolt, yet my legs anchored as the laugh deepened, curling through the dark like cold smoke, promising the night had only just begun. Boot steps slapped the corridor. Slow, boot heel. Boot heel, like somebody taking their time sizing me up. "Hello? Front desk, that you?" My own voice cracked. I lunged to the door and squinted through the fisheye lens. Bare hallway, wall lamps buzzing. Still the tread advanced. Steady, as a metronome that only I could hear. "Quit messing around," I barked, more plea than threat. The key refused to budge, felt welded. "Come on, don't do this to me, girl," I muttered, old habit of sweet-talking engines and locks. Nothing. Sweat iced my ribs. When I spun, the curtains yawned apart like theater drapes. Outside, under a ravaged moon, stood a figure. Ink black, frozen. My breath snagged. I inched forward. 1 step. 2. Trying to convince myself it was a warped reflection. Light spat, died, blinked alive. The window was empty, because it had come inside. It waited by the wardrobe, tall as the ceiling fan. Body a void that drank. The lamplight. No eyes, no mouth, yet a spotlight of awareness bored into me. Instinct shoved me backward till my calves hit the mattress. I snatched the brass desk lamp, cords tearing loose. "Stay right there, partner," I warned, voice hitching. To an Arkansas twang I thought I'd lost on the road. The silhouette didn't twitch. A susurrus bled into the room, voices dozens layered like bad radio frequencies. Not from the thing. They orbited it, jabbering, pleading, arguing in tongues I half recognized. A child's Spanish lisp, a brittle Boston baritone, a woman, sobbing "Quédate conmigo." They were reporting to the shadow, not the other way around. It blurred, and leapt. I howled, swung the lamp. Metal hissed through black smoke. Frost stabbed through my sternum as the darkness poured straight through, me like liquid nitrogen. Knees folded. I hit the carpet, lungs locked. "Move! Move!" I rasped, slamming my chest till air trickled back. Adrenaline snapped the haze. I lunged for the door, jerked the key. Now it spun easy, traitorous, and flung the slab open. I blasted into the corridor. The air behind me folded. I knew it followed. One glance back confirmed. A smudge against wallpaper, rushing. I pounded down the stairs 3 at a time. "Help! Anybody!" My echo mocked me. Lobby. Deserted. Chandeliers swayed, though no draft existed. I dove behind the reception counter. Shoulder firing pain. "Wake up, old man. Wake up," I muttered, remembering Dad shaking me from night terrors. Count the breaths. Find the ground. 5 in, 5 out. The hotel fell mausoleum still. No steps. No voices. No shadow. I peeked over. The counter. Bronze doors gaped to the parking lot, hinges whining in the wind that shouldn't reach this deep. Invitation or trap, I didn't care. I sprinted, shoes slapping marble, and burst into the night, engine coughing, headlights carving gravel. I tore out of the lot, speedometer climbing. I left my duffel, my logbook, my credibility. Fine by me. 10 miles south, I finally pulled over beneath a lone highway sodium lamp and dry heaved until my throat burned. Back at a truck stop diner, coffee sloshing, hands trembling, I scoured forums. Parador Halcon haunting, room 22 attack. Post after post. Delivery drivers, backpackers, honeymooners. Same hour, same cold, same blind thing. One entry dated 1978. Heard them talking, but the dark man never talks back. He just listens. The writer was never heard from again. Right there, under greasy fluorescent light, I swore an oath my grandma would have called a binding. Not me, not twice. Now I reroute at the first green sign for Halcon, even if it costs me fuel and sleep. Old castles can keep their secrets. I'll stick to chain motels and neon vacancy signs. Some detours save your life. Room 22 saved its own. Never took ghost stories seriously. Not really. People just spinning tales for kicks, trying to feel something in the middle of a dull week. That's what I always thought. Live bold, I figured, and nothing's got a chance to latch onto you. At least, that was the mindset I carried into the graveyard shift at Trent Street's all-night library. 2:30 in the morning, and I was hunched behind the front desk with a bent paperback thriller I'd already read twice. Books have been my comfort since I was a kid. Ma used to tease me, said she wouldn't tuck me in unless I got through, at least 2 chapters. Maybe that's why ghost stories never landed for me. They always felt like cheap parlor tricks pretending to be something bigger. The place was a tomb. A pair of med students camped out at a back table, caffeine twitching in their fingers. An older guy, probably retired, smelled like pipe tobacco, sat cross-legged in the maps section, tracing rivers on pages too delicate to breathe on. Overhead, the fluorescence hummed like a distant swarm of insects. That was it. My job? Sit, read, and make sure nobody slipped out with a book they didn't pay for. It left me more time to devour words than any job probably should. I stood to stretch, my knees cracking louder than I wanted to admit, and wandered into the aisles, hunting for something new to tear into. That's when the old rumor floated back. One of those things whispered between students at orientation or half-drunk in dorm lounges. A cursed book, supposedly haunted by the spirit of its unpublished author. Legend had it, he dropped dead mid-sentence, hunched over the final draft, and now he lingered in the stacks like a bitter editor who couldn't let go. They said touching the book meant 24 hours of hell. Some pushed it further, claimed, The curse lasted a lifetime. Classic urban legend. My first thought was, if it was really that bad, why the hell was it still on the shelf? I turned down the aisle and stopped short. There was a stretch, maybe 6 feet, where even the dust looked uneasy, thick, undisturbed, like no one had dared pass through in years. The janitors must have been skipping it entirely. Even the faintest broom stroke would have left a trail. My curiosity flared up like a match. Reckless, stupid thing. I reached in and pulled the book free. No chill, no sudden shadow. Just a heavy hardcover coated in a fine layer of grime and cobwebs. I wiped it, on my sleeve. The title meant nothing to me, some obscure phrase in faded gold script, but that only made it more intriguing. Whatever it was, it hadn't been checked out in ages. Back at the front desk, I kicked my shoes off, tucked my legs under me, and opened to the first page. The story snapped its teeth right out of the gate. A charming, articulate killer seducing victims with poetry and wine before slicing them open. The writing was unnervingly good. It didn't feel like fiction. It felt lived in, intimate, almost too real. I found myself leaning closer, heart tick-ticking as each chapter twisted, deeper. By the time Marcy clocked in, hair in a messy bun, travel mug in one hand, keys jangling, I'd torn through the whole thing. Not a single break. I placed the book back on its shelf like a sacred object, even polished the ones beside it. Ghost book? I asked, as she dropped her bag behind the desk. Read it cover to cover. Still breathing, she gave me a sideways look, one brow arching just high enough to say, "You poor bastard." "Your funeral," she muttered, then shoved her earbuds in and started tapping away on her phone. I walked out into the brittle cold of early morning feeling smug, myth busted, ego intact. My breath fogged in front of me like steam, and I let myself savor it. In the car, the exhaustion hit like a sledgehammer. My eyes kept flickering closed at red lights. I just wanted heat, a shower, bed. Back home I dumped my clothes on the floor, flicked on the bathroom light, and started my nightly routine half on autopilot. Teeth brushed. Bladder emptied. Faucet turned. Steam curled up the mirror, fogging it into a blur. I stepped in, expecting comfort, expecting the hot water to peel the night off me. But something was wrong. I paused. There, behind the soft patter of the water, was a sound, so faint it was almost imagined. A whisper, right against my left ear. No breath, no body, just a needle-thin voice threading through the steam. I couldn't make out the words. I didn't need to. Every hair on my neck stood up at once. Something had followed me home. I locked the door with shaking hands and scanned every inch of the tiled walls. Nothing but steam, and my own warped reflection in the mirror. Of course it was empty. Of course it was. "Get a grip, Eli," I muttered under my breath, forcing the soap into a weak lather and scrubbing my skin like I could erase the memory. The water pounded down, hot and heavy. But that hush came creeping back. Not silence. No. Something quieter than silence, like a breath holding itself in the dark just behind my ear. Love don't run forever. Life runs shorter. I froze. My blood iced over. The voice was low, southern, like molasses dragged across gravel, every word brushing cold against my skin. I'd read that exact sentence in the book, page 212, 3:30 a.m. I'd even underlined it. Back then it was just another line in a thriller. Now, it felt like a knife dragging slow across my spine. My heart beat out a panic rhythm, thudding against my ribs like fists slamming porcelain. I bolted from the stall, slipping slightly on the wet floor. "It's just exhaustion," I said aloud, though the words trembled out of me like cracked glass. "Brain's just regurgitating dialogue, that's all. Sleep deprived, that's all it is." I dried off in frantic motions, a laugh tumbling out, sharp and empty, half humor, half hope. "Brain? Sure you still got one?" The voice hissed again, this time teasing, raspy. It sounded like Uncle Dean after a carton of Marlboros and a bottle of Jim Beam, except Uncle Dean had been buried 5 years ago. "Shut up," I barked, my voice brittle. I wrapped the towel around my waist like armor and stepped in front of the mirror, demanding something normal to look back at me. But the mirror didn't give me that. Instead, it gave me words. "Love don't run forever. Life runs shorter." The sentence had been dragged across the glass in thick red strokes, each letter still weeping crimson. My mind scrambled for logic. Read, Toothpaste? Rusty water from a burst pipe? Some kind of condensation trick? But the smell, it wasn't mint. It was copper. Wet metal. I gripped the sink hard enough to hurt, knuckles gone white. The message just stared back at me. When I tried to wipe it off, the towel screeched against the glass. But the words stuck, like dried blood threaded deep into tile grout. That was it. I panicked, threw on sweatpants, yanked a hoodie over my head, and dove under the quilt my mom made me back when life was softer. I curled up and listened. The room was dark, too dark. Shadows stretched long like they were reaching. In the hush, that whisper slipped in again, curling into my thoughts like smoke. Tell me, Eli, which chapter you want to die in? I clamped my eyes shut and started whispering prayers I hadn't thought about since church camp, the kind you say more out of desperation than belief. The voice just chuckled low in response like it was savoring my fear, amused by my broken Latin and childhood hope. Sleep finally dragged me under, not like a blanket, but like drowning in mud, slow and heavy. When I woke up, sunlight stabbed through the blinds like a slap. My phone read 1:35 p.m. The apartment was still, eerily so. The fridge kicked on with a soft clunk, reminding me I was awake, that this was real. Cautiously, I padded back to the bathroom. Mirror. Clean. No red. No message. Bulbs bright as ever. Not a trace. Dream. Maybe. I almost let myself believe it. Until I saw the towel. It lay where I dropped it, crumpled on the tile. But the fabric had stiffened. Hardened with something dark. Something that wasn't water. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. I called Marcy. "I'm out," I said. My voice came out hoarse. She laughed. "What, over some ghost story?" "Not a story," I said. "A warning." And I hung up before the line could carry his voice again. 5 minutes later, I sent my resignation email. No explanation. Now when I walk past Trent Street, the library windows catch the sunlight just right. Sharp, like knives. I cross the street. Every time. Collar up, hands in pockets, pretending the chill is from the wind. But I know better. Some stories don't want readers, they want narrators to finish the last line, in blood. Let me tell you about one of the weirdest nights I ever had working the graveyard shift at that old corner convenience store on Maple and 8th. If you've ever worked nights, you know it draws in every kind of strange soul imaginable. Drifters, insomniacs, folks whispering to no one in particular. It just became part of the background noise. But some nights burrow under your skin. Like this one time, around 1:30 a.m., an old woman walked in. Real, hunched over. Type, bundled in layers like it was the middle of December even though we were pushing late spring. Her hair was thin and yellowing, like someone had tried to bleach it decades ago and never looked back. She smiled at me when she walked in, friendly, almost too friendly. Most people don't even look up when they come through those doors, let alone greet the clerk. I remember thinking, well, that's a first. She took her time, slowly pacing, through the aisles like she was searching for something that didn't exist. Nearly 20 minutes passed, and when she finally came to the counter, she'd picked out just one single can of peas. Just peas. That already made my stomach twist, a little. As I scanned it, I offered a polite, "Find everything okay, ma'am?" But she didn't answer, just gave me a tight little smile. Then she turned to leave, and that's when it all spilled out. Clatter, a bar of dark chocolate, a pricey-ass bottle of Merlot, and what must have been half the candy aisle dropped from underneath her coat. I blinked. She didn't even flinch. "Ma'am," I started, voice cautious but firm. She turned, looked right through me with these glassy, dead serious eyes, and said in this almost whispery voice, "I didn't mean to." Then she shuffled out the door before I could get another word in, and that wasn't even the weirdest part of the month. There was another night, maybe a week later, when two boys, about 12, maybe 13, came tearing in. Looked like twins. Same mop of curly brown hair, same twitchy energy, though one had braces and the other kept chewing on the drawstring of his hoodie. I was ringing up some guy buying smokes when I heard the crash. I shot my head up. Aisle 3. Juice, cereal, half a display of snack cakes, all destroyed. And the two boys? Standing in the middle of it like they'd just discovered gold. Filming. It all on their phones and giggling like maniacs. I stormed over. "Hey, what the hell is this? You think this is a playground?" One of them just said, "Relax, old man. It's for TikTok." Like that was supposed to explain it. Nearly snapped. Told him to clean it up or get out. They bolted, still laughing. I spent the next hour scrubbing fruit punch off the tile, but none of that compares to what happened one particular Wednesday night. It started off quiet, and honestly, I was thankful for it. I'd been pulling doubles all week, running on gas station coffee and microwaved burritos. Around 10:15 p.m., I was restocking gum near the register when the bell over the door dinged. That's when he walked in. Tall dude, maybe 6'1", built like he hadn't seen a decent meal in months, arms and legs like broomsticks. He had on snakeskin pants, snakeskin, I kid you not, and worn dusty cowboy boots that clomped on the linoleum with each step. Didn't say a word to me. Didn't even look at me properly. Just made a beeline for the freezer section. I watched him, half out of curiosity, half because my gut immediately screamed that something was off. He loaded up 2 frozen chickens, a few tomatoes, some potatoes. Normal stuff, if you ignored the outfit. I figured he was wrapping up, but then he just stopped. Stood completely still by aisle 5. Didn't move a muscle. Suddenly, crash. I jumped. The sound came from the grocery section. I ran over and nearly slipped. Every single jar of peanut butter I'd neatly stacked that afternoon was now rolling across the floor like little tan grenades. And there he was, crouched low to the ground, arms on his knees, staring at the mess like it held the secrets of the universe. Sir? You okay?" I said, trying to keep it cool. He looked up, barely, and mumbled, "It's not my fault." His voice was flat, like someone reading from a script they didn't understand. Then he stood, walked right past me, slow and calm, and set his items on the belt like nothing happened. I scanned them in silence. I handed him the bag and said, "Have a good night, sir." No response. He took the bag and ran. Just bolted out the store like the place was about to explode. I stood there blinking, heart doing weird somersaults. Then, I sighed, grabbed the mop and went back to clean up the peanut butter war zone. Didn't see him again for a week. Figured maybe he was some eccentric loner or on something. But then, next Wednesday, same time, same doorbell ding, same man, same goddamn snakeskin pants. He walked the same path, chicken, potatoes, tomatoes, and paused again near aisle 5. Crash. My spine tightened before I even looked. Peanut butter jars, all over the floor, again. And this time, I swear to you, he smiled. I'd had enough. I marched right up to him, heart thumping, and snapped, "All right, what the hell is going on with you?" Same flat stare, same weird echoey tone. "It's not my fault." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He shifted a little, head tilted like a confused dog. "It's the peanut butter's fault," he added, dead serious. I stared at him. "Are you messing with me right now?" I said, louder than I meant to. "No," he barked, voice cracking. "It's not my fault." That was it. My patience snapped like dry twine. "Look, I'm gonna check the cameras. If I see you knocking this stuff over again, I will call the cops." His face twisted. "It's not my fault." He yelled it again, louder this time, almost like a kid throwing a tantrum. But there was something off about it, like he truly believed it, like he was stuck on a loop he couldn't break. I suddenly felt a chill crawl up my back. This wasn't just some weirdo anymore. Something about his voice, the desperation in it. It rattled me. I tried to keep calm, raised my hands. "Sir, I'm asking you to leave, all right? Let's just call it a night." He didn't budge. His eyes darted around the room, twitchy, like he was hearing something I couldn't. Then the bell above the door jingled, and a woman walked in. She was in her late 30s, tired eyes, cardigan over a scrubs top, probably coming off a nursing shift. She looked between us, then over at the mess on the floor. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked, stopping near the peanut butter shelf. Time froze. Her voice cut through the tension, and for a moment, the guy stood still, just watching her. She bent down, picked up one of the jars, and looked over at me. "Sorry, can I pay for this real quick? My kid loves this stuff." That's when he snapped. He spun toward her, eyes flaring. "What are you doing?" he growled. She froze, startled. "Buying peanut butter," she said cautiously. "It's for my son. He's 10. It's good protein. I mean, I've eaten it my whole life. Why? Her voice was gentle. She was trying to ease the tension, maybe hoping kindness would calm him down. Big mistake. Before either of us could blink, he lunged, grabbed a bottle of ketchup off the shelf and smashed the jar out of her hands. Glass and peanuts exploded across the floor. Then, crack, he brought the ketchup bottle down on her head. She screamed, stumbled back, blood beginning to streak down her temple. And then before I could react, he crouched and picked up a jagged shard of the broken bottle, holding it up like a blade. "Don't touch it again," he roared at her. "Don't ever touch it." I couldn't move. My body locked up, like my limbs had turned to stone. She clutched her bleeding head and backed away slowly, but now his eyes turned on me. Locked. Unblinking. That glass shard still in his fist, pointed like a knife. He took a step toward me. I didn't think. I ran. Bolted. Out the door, heart beating in my throat. My legs felt rubbery, but I didn't stop until I was outside, gulping cold air like it was water. I turned just in time to see the woman, dazed and bleeding, climb into her car. She pulled away, tires screeching, blood visible even through her window. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, nearly dropped it trying to hit 911. Cops showed. Up fast, thank God. 2 cruisers, lights flashing, tires crunching into the lot. They rushed in and pinned the guy before he could hurt anyone else. He didn't even fight. Just dropped the glass and started crying, rocking back and forth on the floor. Later, after the chaos, an officer stayed back to give me the rundown. Turns out the guy had a long history of mental health issues. Grew up in a broken home. His mom, severely unstable, fed him nothing but peanut butter sandwiches, every single meal, for years. No school, no friends, just isolation and jars of peanut butter until he finally ran away when he was 9. He developed an aversion so intense, it warped into something darker, some kind of trauma-fueled obsession. When that woman said she was feeding it to her kid, it must have pulled him straight back into that nightmare. I stood there behind the counter long after they were gone, replaying the scene in my head. I felt bad for the guy. I really did. But I felt worse for her. She only had a minor cut, thank God. A bruise and a hell of a scare. But me, I'd never look at aisle 5 the same way again. I kept working there after that. Weirdos still came and went. But that night, that was the only time I looked terror dead in the eyes and watched it crack. I still remember working the night shift at the Oaks Hotel like it was yesterday. I took that security job back in 2016, fresh out of college, broke as hell, and desperate for anything that paid under the table. The hotel wasn't glamorous. 5 floors, a dinky little bar, and a pool that shut down by 9 p.m. My nights were always the same. Start on the first floor, make my rounds, check locks, wave at the camera like an idiot, and keep my ears open for late-night guests calling in about missing towels or busted AC units. Thing is, the place felt different after dark. During the day, it had this quiet charm, kinda cozy in a dated mid-'80s sort of way. But come nightfall, it turned cold. Not physically, I mean in your gut. Like the walls were listening. I used to joke with Rosa, the night maid, about how the air changed after sunset. She'd always shake her head and mutter in Spanish, "Los muertos no descansan aquí." The dead don't rest here. I laughed it off then. Should have listened. That night started like all the others. I punched in at 11, grabbed the flashlight with the flickering bulb, and clipped on the old Motorola radio. First floor was dead quiet. Second, same, but when I hit the third, I heard it. Thud. Heavy, like someone dropping a toolbox or slamming a door. I stopped mid-step and pressed my back to the wall. Probably someone grabbed a soda from the vending machine, I muttered, more to myself than anything. Still, I headed for the security desk and pulled up the stairwell cam. Nothing, just empty steps and flickering lights like always, but something felt off. You ever get that gut pull? Like your body knows before your brain catches up? Yeah, that. I walked to the stairwell door, hand already tightening on the handle. The second I cracked it open, the overhead light above me stuttered, buzz click, then stayed dim. Typical. I made a mental note to add it to the maintenance log. "Hello?" I called down. No answer. I stepped down a few stairs, shining the light along the concrete steps. Empty. Probably just pipes, I said aloud. This building creaks like it's got arthritis. I turned to go back up, and that's when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Not quick, not rushed. Just slow, deliberate footsteps. Coming up. My flashlight trembled in my hand. I looked down, and that's when I saw it. A shadow, detached from anything physical, stretching up the stairwell. Wall. No feet, no face. Just that thing, gliding upward like smoke curling under a door. My chest locked up. I couldn't move. I swear to God it stopped right as I saw it, like it knew I was watching. Then it rushed me. I slammed the stairwell door so hard the sound echoed. My legs kicked into overdrive. I sprinted through the third-floor corridor, past the faded blue carpets and dusty potted plants, heading straight for the back maintenance wing. I slammed through the emergency door without thinking. "Wait!" The alarm blared like a banshee. Shit. Shit, shit, I hissed, breath ragged. The manager, Mr. Halford, was gonna chew me out in the morning. But screw it, I had bigger problems. I turned to look back, and froze. It was there. Down the hall, just past the flickering exit sign. No footsteps, no sound, just floating. It didn't walk. It hovered, like the air itself held it up. "What the hell is that?" I whispered, not even realizing I said it. It didn't move. Just stared. Or at least I felt like it did. You ever feel eyes on you even when you can't see them? That. I turned and ran deeper into the service corridors, heart hammering like it was trying to break out of my chest. I ducked under hanging wires, dodged around old mop buckets and crates stacked high with busted appliances. It felt like I was running through a labyrinth that twisted behind me as I moved. I didn't hear it chasing me, but I felt it, like a pressure behind my ears, a buzz in my skull. My hand started shaking. My mouth was dry. I could barely breathe. Then it happened. My foot snagged on a coiled fire hose, half covered in plastic sheeting. I went down hard. Face smacked the concrete like a hammer hitting meat. My flashlight skittered across the floor. Pain shot up my right leg. "Ah, fuck," I groaned, trying to scramble to my feet. Blood dripped from my lip. My knee throbbed. I'd lost time. I knew it. And that made everything worse. Because now it had the upper hand. The alarm was still shrieking overhead, echoing like a scream that wouldn't stop. But beneath it, the corridor was dead quiet. Too quiet. My ears rang. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. I turned my head, slowly, every nerve praying. I'd find nothing behind me. No such luck. It was closer now. The shape, no thing, just stood there. Except it wasn't standing, not really. It didn't walk. It didn't float. It shifted, like oil swirling in water, constantly changing, never holding one form long enough to make sense of it. It bent reality around it, like heat warping air on pavement. I couldn't stop staring. My legs screamed with pain, but adrenaline pushed it aside. I reached for anything. My fingers landed on a cold, rusted pipe mounted along the wall. I grabbed it like a lifeline, heart pounding so loud I could feel it in my teeth. "There's nothing there," I muttered under my breath, trying to ground myself. "It's just a hallucination. You hit your head. You're bleeding, that's all." Then I heard it. A sound I still hear in my dreams. Low, guttural. Not human, not animal. Just wrong. It bounced off the concrete walls like it was inside. Them, vibrating straight through my ribs. I backed up fast, slamming into a stack of plastic crates. They crashed down, echoing like thunder. That's all it took. The shadow surged. It didn't move. It arrived. 1 second it was yards away, the next it was on me. Something impossibly cold coiled around my neck. My boots left the ground. I was airborne, weightless, dying. My mouth opened, but nothing came out, just gasps. My hands clawed at empty air, trying to peel off whatever was choking me. I swung the metal pipe wildly. It passed through the thing like it wasn't even there. No resistance, no impact. Just cold, thin air. My chest burned, my eyes welled. Everything turned to static. Then, just when the edges of my vision went black, it dropped me. I hit the floor hard, my lungs sucking air like it was fire. My body convulsed, every muscle twitching. I rolled to my side, wheezing, snot and tears mixing as I tried to piece together what had just happened. When I finally looked up, it was gone. The hallway was empty. The siren still wailed. But it felt far away now, like it belonged to another world. My mind was barely holding it together. All I knew was, I had to get out. I dragged myself across the floor, fingers scraping against concrete. Every movement felt like a knife twisting in my leg. Something was definitely broken. But that didn't matter. I wasn't staying in that place another second. Each inch forward was a battle. My brain kept stuttering, repeating the same thought. Get out, get out, get out! I was nearly at the exit door when it happened again. Something invisible yanked me back. I screamed. Not a brave movie hero scream, just raw terror, my throat tearing from the force of it. I flailed, hands slapping against cold tile until, there, the door handle. I grabbed it and pulled with everything I had left. The door flew open. Cold night air hit me like a wave. I tumbled out, dragging my broken leg behind me. The hotel lights glowed behind me like the mouth of a furnace, flickering, hungry. I didn't stop. I crawled down the concrete steps, across the gravel, until I collapsed on the front walk. Couldn't cry, couldn't scream, just stared up at the stars like they might explain what the hell just happened. I don't know how long I lay there. At some point, maybe an hour later, maybe more, headlights swept across the parking lot. A guy in an old sedan hit the brakes. When he saw me, half dead on the sidewalk, he called 911. I barely remember the ambulance ride. At the hospital, they told me what I already knew. My leg was fractured clean through. What I didn't expect were the bruises, ring-shaped ones like hands curling around my throat and shoulders. Was it an assault? The nurse asked gently. I just stared at her. When the cops came by to ask questions, I told them I slipped on a wet floor during my shift. End of story. Later that night, I emailed the hotel manager, told him I quit, effective immediately. He never replied. I never followed up. I don't know if Mr. Halford knew what was in that hotel, or if that night was the first time it showed itself. Either way, I sure as hell wasn't sticking around to find out. I've never stepped foot near the Oaks again. Even now, when I think about it, when I remember, my throat tightens, my hands tremble. That night lives in me like a scar no one can see. And I'm scared one day. It might come looking. I worked at a gas station near a place called Foster in the Virginia countryside. I used to drive there from Glare, and my shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. My boss was called Judd, and he lived right next door in an old house that he had built himself. I always thought he was a great guy. And although sometimes I doubted that he had really done everything on his own, as he said, the truth is that he was too nice to say anything to him. Not many people can say that they had a boss who would do anything to keep them safe. But I can, so sometimes I feel a bit bad for not visiting him more. But I've started to avoid anything to do with Foster. And in the end, you'll understand why I worked at the station for 9 months and 3 weeks doing shifts from 2 to 5 nights a week depending on how busy I was with school. The place never gave me any trouble in that sense. It was one of the best jobs I ever had on the weekends. The place got a bit busy, but during the rest of the week, I could spend whole nights serving only 2 or 3 customers most of the time. I would watch movies on my iPod, which was the latest thing in entertainment. Judd was a pretty laid-back boss. He didn't give me a lot of tasks, and he didn't keep me busy. He had only one rule: if someone came to the station and behave. Strangely, he had to call him no excuses. It didn't matter if that woke him and his wife from a deep sleep or if it put them in a bad mood. It was his service station and his retirement plan, so it was important that everything was okay. I admit that at first that rule made me nervous. It left me with the feeling that there were a lot of weird people hanging around the station, although in reality, nothing strange had happened in those months. One day, while I was in the back room dividing my attention between the security monitors and the new season of Game of Thrones, when suddenly I noticed a figure approaching. We had 3 cameras, one in front of the pumps, one focusing on the entrance, and another that let me see inside the store from the office. So I saw this guy walking towards the pumps, and he stopped right in front of camera number 2. The guy looked like a typical Virginia country boy. He was wearing a pair of worn jeans work boots and a baseball cap with some kind of logo on it. He was literally the most normal guy you could see coming in. However, it was his behavior that had me on my toes, even though he had worked there without any problems for all this time. I remembered a previous incident that made me think about Judd's warning. One night around 4 a.m. a woman had been screaming as if she were possessed near the pump. She had called Judd, explaining the situation, and he told me to stay calm and that he would go. Fortunately, the woman left before he arrived, but now with that man in front of the entrance, something about his attitude made me frown. I could see him standing right next to the shop door, and although I used to work at a gas station near a place called Foster in the Virginia countryside, my shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I would drive there from Glare. My boss, Judd, lived right next door in an old house he had built himself. He was a great guy, though I sometimes wondered if he had really done all the work on his own like he claimed. But Judd was so kind that I never questioned him about it. Not many people can say their boss would do anything to keep them safe, but I can. That's why I sometimes feel guilty for not visiting him more often. However, I've started avoiding anything related to Foster, and soon you'll understand why. I worked at the station for exactly 9 months and 3 weeks, covering shifts anywhere from 2 to 5 nights a week, depending on my school schedule. The job was easy and never gave me any trouble. Honestly, it was one of the best jobs I ever had. Weekends could get busy, but for most of the week, I would go entire nights serving only 2 or 3 customers. Most of the time, I entertained myself by watching movies on my iPod, which was the latest thing in entertainment back then. Judd was a pretty relaxed boss. He never overloaded me with tasks or kept me busy unnecessarily. He had just one rule. If someone came to the station and acted strangely, I had to call him. No exceptions. It didn't matter if he and his wife were deep asleep or if I thought it was a minor issue. His service station was his retirement plan, and he wanted to ensure everything stayed in order. At first, that rule made me nervous. It gave me the impression that a lot of weird people wandered around the station, though nothing strange had actually happened in the months I had worked there. Then one night, while I was in the back room, half watching the security monitors and half absorbed in the new season of Game of Thrones, I noticed someone approaching. We had 3 cameras, one facing the pumps, another aimed at the entrance, and a third showing the inside of the store, from the office. On the screen, I saw a man walking toward the pumps before stopping right in front of camera number 2. He looked like a typical Virginia country boy, worn jeans, work boots, and a baseball cap with some kind of logo on it. He was as normal looking as they came, but something about his behavior put me on edge. Even though I had worked at the station without any major problems, I remembered a past incident that made me recall Judd's warning. One night around 4 a.m., a woman had been screaming near the pumps, her voice frantic as if she were possessed. I had called Judd to explain the situation, and he told me to stay calm while he came over. Luckily, she left before he arrived. Now, standing in front of the entrance, this man's body language made me uneasy. I could see him standing right by the shop door, and although this is the first time I've ever dared to share something like this, but I feel like I have to, because this experience is burned into my memory forever. To give some context, I'm a guy who works the night shift at a gas station deep in the South, somewhere in Louisiana, so remote that most people don't even know it exists. I'm talking about nameless dirt roads, trees so dense they swallow the light, and maybe, if you're lucky, a streetlight every couple of miles. The gas station I work at is basically the heart of this forgotten place. Given the hour, it doesn't get much traffic. Most of the visitors are just possums rummaging through the trash, so the nights are usually quiet. The shift started out like any other. I made sure the coffee was fresh, checked the snacks and beer in the fridge, and after finishing that routine, I just stood behind the counter, going through the inventory and listening to music. For the first 2 hours, it was just me and the silence. You know how they say time flies? Well, not that night. I was so bored that I decided to step outside for some air while checking the shelves. That's when I suddenly heard a voice call out, "Hey, is someone there?" For some reason, an uneasy feeling washed over me. I turned around slowly and saw 2 customers standing at the checkout. My body, tense from the sudden noise, relaxed a little, but something still felt off. The gas station has one of those fancy systems that chimes when someone enters, yet I hadn't heard a sound. How had they gotten in without me noticing? I hurried over to the register, apologizing for keeping them waiting. As we exchanged small talk, one of them commented, "Man, it's really dark in here," while the other asked how far it was to town. Without thinking, I answered with the phrase I've repeated 100 times, "Just a couple of miles toward the lights." It sounds simple, but for some reason, saying it this time felt different. After scanning their items, a caramel knee bar, a bottle of water, and a few packs of biscuits, I warned them about the tornado watch in effect until 4 a.m. The rain had already started coming down hard, making the roads, which were difficult to navigate even on clear nights, even more treacherous. That's when I glanced over at the second customer, only to realize he was gone. It was odd. He hadn't walked past me, and from what I could tell, he didn't have anything in his hands. Maybe he had been after cigarettes, which were behind the counter. Either way, he had left without a word. At this point, I was just trying to kill time until my shift ended, but something about the night was unsettling. The clouds outside were darkening faster than usual, and within an hour of the two men leaving, the sky finally gave in. A torrential downpour began, but this wasn't just normal rain. It was the kind of storm that makes the air thick and suffocating. The kind I call hua, meaning humid and muggy. Thunder rumbled overhead, deep and angry, making the whole situation feel even stranger. I stayed by the window, watching as raindrops streaked down the glass like tiny rivers. But then, in the midst of all that chaos, something made my stomach drop. I scanned the darkness outside, searching for the source of my unease. Yet all I could see was pitch black. However, there was something in the air, an unsettling presence that made me feel like I wasn't alone. The station was empty, yet my skin crawled and my nerves tightened with each passing second. As the wind howled and the rain came down in sheets, I had a sinking feeling that the power lines wouldn't hold out for long. Sure enough, the moment came. The station was swallowed by an all-consuming darkness. With no backup generator, I was trapped in a pitch-black void that felt like it could consume me. I immediately called my boss to let him know the power was out and to ask what I should do. But of course, it was past 2 a.m., and there was no answer. I considered locking up and waiting for the storm to pass when, over the sound of thunder and pounding rain, I heard something. A creaking noise came from one of the aisles in the back. At first, I dismissed it. Maybe it was just the storm playing tricks on my mind. But the sound gnawed at me. It wouldn't go away. I called my boss again, but still, nothing. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, my phone's flashlight flickered and shut off. Just what I needed, I muttered sarcastically, struggling to adjust to the pitch-black surroundings. And then, I heard movement. This time it was closer. Before I could react, my next call was cut off by a deafening clap of thunder. My stomach twisted. I'd spent years listening to horror stories, and suddenly, I felt like I was in one. The kind that never ended well. Something was off. Something was wrong. I tried to stay calm, but the unease wouldn't fade. What if I wasn't imagining things? What if I really wasn't alone? Seeking any source of light, I stayed by the window, watching the raindrops streak down the glass. Time passed, and gradually, the storm began to settle. As the heavy rain stopped, an eerie silence filled the station. A part of me felt relieved, thinking the worst was over. But then, out of the darkness, a figure emerged. A voice cut through the silence. "Give me all the money." I froze. For a split second, I couldn't believe what was happening. Then he repeated himself, more forcefully this time. I said, "Give me the money." I wish I could say I did something brave. Something that would have stopped him in his tracks like in the stories I'd heard. But the truth? I was terrified. And so, I did exactly what he asked. He knew the storm had worked in his favor. He knew the police wouldn't get here anytime soon, even if I called. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't random. This guy had been in the station earlier. He had disappeared from my sight, only to hide behind the shelves, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It was all planned. Not that there was much money in the till that night. But once he got what he wanted, he bolted out into the storm. I was left standing there, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. Later, when I finally reached my manager, he apologized for not answering sooner. I told him not to worry. Everyone deserved to sleep. He instructed me to close up for a few hours until the next shift arrived. But I was so shaken by everything that I could hardly grasp that it was real. 2 months passed, and I stumbled across some news that sent a chill down my spine. A man had been caught trying to rob a service station not far from mine. I recognized him instantly. The only difference was, this time, he didn't manage to escape. The only thing I can take away from this whole nightmare is that no matter how safe or predictable your daily routine may seem, you always have to stay alert. Life has a way of throwing the unexpected at you, even in the most ordinary places.